Safety on sites that use industrial trucks is the business of everybody who works there. But this isn't just the permanent staff. Visitors such as mobile engineers are also responsible for safety. This means complying with legislation, standards and best practice. Historically, the best way to meet these requirements was to participate in one of the many safety passport schemes available. However, there are now so many of these different schemes that BITA has decided to act in order to simplify and clarify the situation, although PAS 90 will not replace any industry-specific arrangements. Working in conjunction with our members, the Forklift Truck Association, the Health and Safety Executive, and particularly the British Standards Institution, we've developed a new standard. PAS 90 is a single, recognized specification containing the minimum safety requirements for on-site maintenance applicable to service engineers and their employers. If you comply to the letter and spirit of PAS 90, then not only will you be complying with the law, you will also be following best practice. PAS 90 gives vital assurance to both the industrial truck industry and their customers of the safety competence of service engineers. So, what does it cover? The scope of PAS 90 ranges from basics such as public and employers' liability insurance and driver licensing to the wider issues of health and safety and training. Environmental awareness is a key topic. Engineers must be both trained and equipped to handle the lubricants, fuel and battery fluids associated with industrial trucks. Waste disposal and incident reporting are also covered. With respect to the service engineer's vehicle, PAS 90 specifies a number of requirements. Processes must be in place to ensure that the vehicle is maintained in a safe and efficient working order, including record keeping. The service engineer must also keep his vehicle clean and tidy. The issue of vehicle loading is also addressed, as is the provision of working lights, and the use of mobile communications equipment, including limitations on its use. The subject of the service engineer's equipment is covered extensively by PAS 90. The employer's and engineer's responsibilities are made clear. All equipment and tools must be fit for purpose. An inventory must be kept of all equipment, and systems must be in place to periodically test and calibrate tools, for which records must be maintained. Jacks, wooden blocks and wheel chocks are given particular attention, as they should be inspected before each use. Lifting and slinging equipment must also be inspected regularly. Engineers must have been specifically trained for any equipment that they use. Site equipment should only be used if it has a current report of thorough examination. The need for provision of appropriate work clothing is covered, as is personal protective equipment. A risk assessment must be carried out to determine what is required, and engineers must be trained in how to use all protective equipment they're provided with. Electrical appliances and equipment with a display screen are also treated in PAS 90. Specific sites often have limitations on the use of electrical equipment, and there are hazards associated with the use of display screen equipment in work areas and while on the road. The issue of working environment is also dealt with. The engineer must assess the appropriateness of the site within which he is expected to work. PAS 90 treats the important subject of health and safety in detail. Topics covered include personal fitness, working at height, working alone, and emergency procedures such as fire and first aid. All engineers must be trained in the procedures to be followed in the event of personal injury. They must also carry a first aid kit in their vehicle and be trained in its use. Manual handling is also covered, as is the handling of hazardous substances and the importance of accident reporting. Engineers must be trained in manual handling techniques and how to avoid the hazards and injuries associated with it. The vital subject of training is also covered comprehensively by PAS 90. Training starts with recruitment. An employer must verify that a person applying for a job is qualified as they say they are. Training and qualifications must be appropriate to the equipment that the engineer will work on. Engineers are also required to be trained and qualified to operate any truck that they may be called to work upon. The importance of site induction training is also mentioned. Many sites have specific requirements over and above the minimum laid out in PAS 90. Records of all training and assessment must be maintained. Finally, the employer of a service engineer must implement an independent verification process to ensure that the training requirements specified in PAS 90 are met. Certification of an individual engineer is valid for 3 years before reassessment is required. For more information and to order copies of PAS 90, go to BITA's website at www.bita.org.uk. Alternatively, phone BITA on 01344 623 800. PAS 90, the new industry standard for service engineers working on site. BITA, lifting industry standards.